Hello. Chairs. Wait, is that okay?
4 chairs and then podium.
Four. Ich komme vorher.
Yeah. Hello, good afternoon. Bon après-midi. I'm using my new French words. Now I have 4. Merci. Well, my name is Christina Granger. Je m'appelle Christina Granger, one of my other phrases. I am a senior social and behavior change advisor in Washington, D.C. for the MCHN office. And can you guys pull up the slides in the back for us? We gotta get moving. Yay, great. Okay, so during today's session, next slide. Next slide. Nope, back. Oh, maybe you don't have the updated slides. Okay, that's okay. All right, which is actually very problematic. Okay, I'm gonna do the best I can with old slides. All right, so during today's session, we are going to talk about best practices in social and behavior change. You'll also get an understanding of the evolution of terminology in SBC quickly, and then also about how SBC fits into the localization agenda. So I'm going to do a brief introduction to kind of get us all on the same page for SBC, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues who will have a panel discussion featuring some of our local partners in SBC. So behavior change is really key to achieving USAID goals. Our administrator, Samantha Power, has said in multiple venues that has talked about the importance of human behavior to really achieve the agency priorities. And so to make progress, we have to understand human behavior, and not just based on intuitions or guesses, but really on concrete data and findings. Next slide. Okay, so the evolution of behavior change terminology. I'm sure many of you remember when we used to use IEC. I've even seen IEC recently on some various documents, but we don't really typically use it anymore. And then things kind of moved along to behavior change communication. And this was because of the recognition that knowledge was really not enough. It wasn't just about information and education, but really about needing to address all of the individual factors that go beyond knowledge. And then we had another kind of change of heart, and we started to use social and behavior change communication, just because we like to confuse you and change our terms all the time. So social and behavior change communication was looking at the fact that, okay, individual factors are not really enough. We don't want to just focus on the individual, but we need to think about the social, gender norms, and other things that kind of make a person who they are and facilitate them to do what they do. And then there was still this huge emphasis on communication. It was in the term, people constantly just focus on communication. So we've decided to confuse you again and change the term to social and behavior change. And this is really a recognition of the fact that there are so many factors that go into changing behavior. And there's a variety of interventions, not just communications level, but structural and other factors that really need to be used to address and achieve social and behavior change. Next slide. So here we have the social and behavior change umbrella, as we like to call it, amongst our SBC advisors. And this was a way to kind of show how all of these different terms that people are using nowadays fit under what we at USAID consider SBC. And so when you hear people talk about human-centered design or behavioral economics, which is the latest buzzword, social marketing, we've talked about social marketing for a long time, and then communication as well. These are all under what we call the SBC umbrella. And so at USAID, our definition of social and behavior change is a systematic, evidence-driven approach to improve and sustain changes in behaviors, norms, and the enabling environment. And so we do this by using all of these different kind of approaches in our toolbox. Next slide. Oh, I forgot my prop. So I'm going to put on my SBC glasses so I can see things through a behavioral lens. So this slide is not showing, it's only my English version is showing the right slide. But what we want to do essentially is we want to constantly be challenging ourselves to look at what it is, who needs to do what in order to change a behavior. We want to look at all of our problems and our challenges and think, okay, how can I apply a behavioral lens to this problem? How can I dig deeper and look at all of the things that influence this person's behavior, the behavior we want to see? And so this is what we try to do in our SBC world and what we try to encourage all of our programs to do, because really everything is about human behavior. There's hardly, yeah. Oh yeah, you did it, thank you. There's hardly any programming that really doesn't have any behavioral element to it. So next slide, see if it's the right one. Yay. Okay, so let's see. So like I said, everything we do as an agency can really go back to behavior. So applying a behavioral lens is not just for families and communities. Oftentimes, I think people consider community approaches and demand creation and community engagement to be the SBC work, but really you can apply a behavioral lens to all actors within the system. So typically in these concentric circles here, typically we have these kind of 3 program strategies that are often used. And I would venture to say that most people would think SBC would fit in the top one, demand and use, which is true. There's lots of things with demand and use where there's SBC components. But, next slide. Go, you could do 3 clicks so it shows all. Dun, 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 dun. Click, click, click. One more, or one more. Yeah, good. Sorry, this is not translated. This was a late edition slide, and it did not get translated. But essentially, you can apply a behavioral lens to each of these other things as well. Oftentimes, we think about the comms, but really there's enabling environment factors where you can use your behavioral lens and put on your SBC sunglasses. You can think about systems, products, and services, and think about what are all of the social and contextual factors that influence uptake and use of products, the development of products, the design of products, etc. So essentially, when we're thinking about any of our programs, it's important to go back and to think, okay, who needs to do what? So if you remember anything from this presentation, I want you to think about putting on your SBC sunglasses and who needs to do what. All right, next slide. So there's kind of endless approaches to SBC that are used in the global community, but here's one simple kind of 4-step option, which is it's very similar to like a normal programmatic approach, but it's also how we make sure that we're doing effective SBC programs. So first, we want to make sure that we're defining the behavioral outcomes that we want to see, not just the overall health outcome, but the behavioral outcome as well. And then we want to understand the context. So we want to really understand, okay, what is it that is motivating or preventing these behaviors? And then the key here is to use that information when we design our program. This is often where I see a kind of miscommunication, that we've done the formative research, we have the data, but then we end up doing the same old programs and we're not actually connecting the findings to the work that we're doing. And so then we want to build and test the activities or the interventions. The key here is pre-testing with community members and actors and stakeholders, and then to learn and adapt. And so all of these things should fit nicely within a theory of change for your programming. Next slide. Okay, so essentially, yes, okay. So I have a few kind of best practices or quick tips for your SBC programming that would be great takeaways for this session today. So the first one is that we're all working towards the same goal. An SBC project doesn't have to stand alone, or an SBC activity doesn't have to be a lone SBC activity. We should work directly with our service delivery programs and with all of our other activities to be working towards the same behavioral outcomes. And that's truly when we're going to see actual behavior change, norm change, and social change. And like I said before, it's really important that we have a strategic theory of change to guide this programming. We need to make sure that we have identified what the priority behaviors are and also those determinants in order to help make sure we see the outcomes. Okay, next. Okay, so the next tip is about provider behavior change. Like I said earlier, oftentimes I think behavior change is defaulted to family members, community members, individuals. But remember, providers are people too, right? They are a main audience for a lot of our interventions. And a lot of times we see work where we're training providers, we're focused on the biomedical approaches or whatever sort of training we're doing, but we're forgetting that they are a target audience for behavior change efforts as well. Again, we can't just tell them what to do and what needs to be done and expect it to happen. We need to look at all of the different things that influence their behavior, their attitudes, beliefs, perceptions, their work environment, their organizational culture, all sorts of things that influence provider behavior as well. Next one. So the next one is considering the context. People aren't just lazy, and I have heard this a number of times that, oh, somebody knows what to do, but they just don't want to do it. And that's really kind of a very simplistic way of looking at it, right? We know that there's so many reasons why people do or don't do certain behaviors. And so what I think oftentimes looks like a people problem is really a situational problem. So sometimes instead of thinking, okay, how can I convince this person to do X behavior? Let's look at the environment around them, right? How can we structure the environment? How can we nudge them? How can we support them in many other ways to do the behaviors that we want to see? Next slide. The next one is about using co-creation approaches. Again, I'm sure I'm talking to an audience of the initiated, that you are all big supporters of locally led and local input and making sure that community members are part of the solutions building. But we want to make sure that we're using this whenever possible. This is kind of one of the classic approaches for SBC, and it's great to see that human-centered design and co-creation are having such a heyday right now. But it's important that we remember to use them whenever we can to ensure that people are part of their own solution and progress. Next slide. And the last quick tip really is about monitoring and evaluation. And oftentimes, like I said, it's important to define a behavioral outcome and to look at the theory of change for how we expect behavior to change. But yet when we go to our data and our monitoring, we're really just collecting data on the health outcomes. We're not collecting any data on the intermediate outcomes and the determinants of the behavior. So then when we get to the end of the project or the end of the quarter or what have you, and we see that our health outcome or our behavior hasn't changed, we don't know why. We don't know whether it's because we chose the wrong determinant, the wrong lever for change, or whether we chose the right one and it just didn't have the impact that we wanted to see. So we need to really make sure that we are monitoring our SBC determinants and our activities and what we would consider our intermediate outcomes or our levers for change to see how we can improve and iterate along the program cycle. So this is just kind of a wrap up of some of these best practices and principles. Some of them I didn't talk about, but this is maybe a cheat sheet of sorts for effective SBC. And so I'm gonna, in the interest of time, I'm gonna move along, but you'll have this in your QR code anyway. So thank you very much for listening. And right now I'm going to turn the mic over to my colleague Fortune Chawla, who's a project management specialist and serving as the community health specialist for USAID Benin. He used to be an SBC officer with a project in the Ministry of Health in Benin, and he is also now managing 2 direct awards to local partners for his mission, which is very exciting. And he's our SBC champion today. So I'm gonna leave it to him to introduce our panelists, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come to the SBC session today. Oh wait, there's our.
Thank you, Christina. Please, we'll now shift to French. So a bit sorry for my English. My Anglophone friends here, because the panelists we have, they are French speakers. Some of them can speak also English, but the way it's scheduled is that we will speak French to really also, we're talking about localization now, right? So some French also here in this room. All right, bonsoir chers amis, bonsoir à tout le monde. Thank you Christina, merci à toi. Nous allons essayer de rentrer un peu dans le concret. Christina a très bien développé tout à l'heure la théorie autour du changement social et comportemental. Je sais qu'il y a beaucoup d'experts dans cette salle, c'est ce que nous faisons le plus sur le terrain, dans la prévention et dans la promotion, notamment en santé. Je voudrais appeler ici 3 personnes, 3 experts que nous avons. Je vais commencer par Bernard. Bernard, s'il te plaît, en attendant qu'on le bouge le pupitre d'ici. Bernard est directeur de l'ONG ADRI. ADRI, c'est Action pour le développement rural intégré. C'est une organisation locale au Rwanda. Vous allez mieux le voir tout à l'heure quand je vais me déplacer d'ici. Et ADRI est une organisation qui travaille dans plusieurs secteurs. Ils sont dans l'agriculture, ils sont également dans la santé, le plaidoyer, la protection de l'enfant, le genre également. Et avec l'USAID, ils travaillent notamment dans la prévention du VIH. Et ils œuvrent pour la réduction de la vulnérabilité des orphelins et enfants vulnérables. Merci Bernard. Merci de l'accueillir avec vos applaudissements. Merci. Ensuite, je voudrais appeler également devant ici Luc Innocent Touré. Voilà. Monsieur Touré nous vient de la Guinée, tout droit. Il est chargé des communications et il travaille avec l'ONG CEGIMAD, qui est le comité Jeunesse Mon Avenir d'abord. Donc, c'est une organisation qui est également partenaire de l'USAID. Merci à vous. Les secteurs d'activité, c'est la santé communautaire depuis plus de 25 ans. Et ils sont également dans la promotion de l'emploi des jeunes. Et ils travaillent aux côtés du gouvernement pour la lutte contre les maladies à potentiel épidémique. Merci. Merci. Merci Touré, Luc Innocent, d'avoir accepté de nous rejoindre ici. Et le dernier panéliste, c'est mon ami Jean-Claude Hakatomalala, j'espère que j'y arrive. Voilà, donc Jean-Claude nous vient de l'ONG ASSOS. ASSOS, c'est Action Socio-Sanitaire Organisation. Donc, ils sont dans le secours et ils sont également dans la santé, bien sûr. Donc, ASSOS travaille dans la santé, la nutrition, les urgences et l'environnement et les droits de l'enfant. Donc, voilà les 3 personnes qui vont partager un peu les pratiques de tous les jours, les expériences dans le changement social et comportemental. Et ensuite, si vous avez des questions très rapidement, on va pouvoir les voir ensemble. Merci. On va entrer dans le vif du sujet. Please, guys, can you help me? Please. Excuse me. I'll move your chair. Très bien. D'accord, merci. Donc, on n'a pas beaucoup de temps, on va y aller rapidement. Je vais commencer par Bernard. Bernard, l'USAID parle aujourd'hui on va parler de la localisation, mais on parle de localisation. Je crois que c'est une approche dont vous avez déjà entendu parler, peut-être à travers des documents, mais le mot, on revient là-dessus depuis hier. on veut mieux entendre les communautés. Il y a 2 engagements forts qui sont faits, que l'administration de l'USAID veut transférer environ 25% de ses fonds dans les mains des organisations locales. Et le deuxième objectif majeur, c'est également que le développement tel qu'il est planifié et tel qu'il est mis en œuvre, qu'on parvienne d'ici 2030 à ce que 50% de la manière dont nous planifions ces activités-là soit aux mains des organisations locales. Alors, dans ce cadre, dans le sens de la planification des activités de communication, qu'est-ce que nous pouvons faire pour que les voix et les priorités des communautés locales soient mieux entendues?
Merci. Merci, Monsieur Fortune. Tu m'as entraîné à parler français alors que j'allais parler en anglais. Au Rwanda, on mélange. Si j'essaie de changer en français, ça va m'être difficile. Before I start, I respond to your question. I would like to present myself as Bernard Harushabana. As you said, I'm the Chief of Party for USAID Thrive Office and Dreams activity. I'm working for local NGO in Rwanda called Duhamik Adri. Duhamik is in local language, and Adri is in French, Action pour le développement rural intégré. Why the name in our local language is to facilitate exactly the awareness of the people we are serving. Our NGO is operating in Rwanda since 1985, almost 40 years ago. Our vision is a rural world responsible for its socio-economic development. And our mission is to support integrated development through the initiative of rural population in their struggle for self-development. We are operating almost countrywide in 27 out of 30 districts of Rwanda. We have many donors, more than 15, including the main one, which is USAID. We have more than 15 projects. As Fortune said, we intervene in different domains, including HIV prevention, health, gender promotion, GBV, child protection, positive parenting, education, agriculture and value chain, environment protection, citizen participation, early childhood development, etc. We started working with USAID from 2010. Where I started working with the Amika Dre 2. I started with the USAID projects in my organization. And I only worked with the USAID projects in my organization. In addition to the definition given by Christine, and in a bit to enter in the question, I can add that the principle of social behavior change is based on the other principle saying that what is done for me without me is against me. So to enter on the question, maybe before to enter on the question, I can say that the objective of the project we are implementing in partnership with USAID is to prevent new HIV infection and reduce vulnerability among orphans and vulnerable children and their families, their household, as well as adolescent girls and younger women in HIV high burden district in Rwanda. We have two main approach. The first one is engaging the community. We can work without engaging the community. The second one is to transform essential health social services delivery system to wide and family-based approach. Allow me to jump in the question, how to elevate local voices and in the SBC. I cannot respond without adding to the voice. I can add the priorities. We have to elevate the voice, but the priorities of the population we are working with. I can give examples of strategies that we are using to elevate the voice of our population as well as their priorities. The first one is to actively engage them. When we engage them during the planning, during the execution, and during the monitoring and evaluation, we are always with them. We also tailor behavior change strategies by aligning them with local tradition and beliefs. Thirdly, before we implement, we identify and empower leadership to serve as role model. When we use the community role models by providing inspiration talks, you can easily change the behaviors in the society. We also conduct assessment to assess what are the challenges in the community. But during the assessment, we collaborate with the communities. We mainly use community volunteers, but we also engage other community members to assess problems that and the community where we need to conduct SBC. We also use our local language. When you go to the community, you have to use your local language. Don't bring your English or French in the community who are not understanding well what you are saying. We use our local language, and we also use media channels that are accessible by the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernard.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Very quickly, because I still need to translate to, to the other people. Alors, donc, pardon? C'est bon? C'est traduit? Oh, great. OK. Alors, donc, merci à Bernard. Je crois que Bernard a quand même bien répondu à notre question. Il est passé par plein d'étapes. Vous avez déjà certainement entendu. Nous allons évoluer dans la discussion et je vais me retourner maintenant d'abord vers Jean-Claude. Jean-Claude Micro. Merci. Alors, Jean-Claude, on parle de SBC. Comment est-ce que les activités de communication vont-elles au-delà de la simple diffusion des messages? Parce que tout à l'heure, Christina a bien montré que la communication telle qu'on la veut aujourd'hui, ce n'est pas simplement le fait de passer les messages. On veut aller au-delà de ça. Donc, le SBC tout court, le changement social et comportemental, va au-delà de la simple communication pour le changement de comportement. Donc, chez vous, dans Simplement Madagascar, comment est-ce que vous menez vos activités de communication afin que la communication tout court soit reliée à des prestations de services et à la demande? Comment ça se passe? Merci.
Merci pour la question. À un certain moment, notre organisation ASOS avait fait un projet de lutte contre le VIH/SIDA, comme notre collègue. Et comme cible, il y avait les chauffeurs, toutes les personnes à risque, les professionnels de sexe. Et à l'époque, c'était vers l'an 2002, comme ça. Et on avait pris les outils, les supports de communication qui ont été partagés par le Secrétariat national de lutte contre le VIH/SIDA. Donc, on avait mis des affiches partout comme ça, comme faites-vous tester, utilisez les préservatifs, etc., etc. Puis, on a vu que ça ne marchait pas. On a fait une petite enquête avec les cibles et on a trouvé quelque chose. On a mis un panneau au bord de la route et les messages qui ont été mis là, c'est une photo de petit enfant avec sa femme. Il avait son père qui est chauffeur et l'enfant disait « Papa, reviens vite à la maison, on a besoin de toi. Et ça a fait vraiment l'effet d'une bombe parce que même presque tous les chauffeurs, ils rentrent dans leur maison qu'une fois, 2 fois par mois. Mais après avoir vu ce message, presque toutes les semaines, les chauffeurs de camions ou les chauffeurs de taxi brousse rentrent à la maison. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut tirer de cela? Parce que c'est un peu par la suite, c'est un peu la base du SPC. Tout d'abord, il faut qu'on connaisse les déterminants, les obstacles, les causes, etc., par rapport à un problème cité. Et c'est à partir de cela, donc, qu'on identifie une vision ou un objectif ou un message, et par la suite les supports de communication qui seront adaptés, qui sont adaptés pour chaque localité. Parce qu'on avait vu aussi que dans notre pays, on a tendance à élaborer, par exemple, les stratégies de communication ou les stratégies CSDC auparavant, en appelant des personnes, on fait un atelier dans la capitale, mais nous, en tant qu'ASSOS, on a toujours plaidé, non, c'est pas comme ça. Il faut vraiment, parce que chaque région a ses spécificités. Chaque région dans notre pays a ses problèmes et ses déterminants pour la santé. Si on veut vraiment avoir une bonne stratégie, il faut descendre dans la communauté d'abord et voir presque tout au moins dans la plupart des régions. Donc c'est cela.
Merci.
Dans le cadre...
Oui, et après, justement, au-delà de la communication, maintenant pour susciter la demande, quels sont les autres leviers sur lesquels vous agissez pour que la demande et l'utilisation suivent? C'est
à partir de ça parce que nous, dans le programme santé qu'on avait mené avec DSA, appelé Maïfamiar, financement USAID, nous, en tant que consortium, sous-récipiendaire donc de DSA, et par la suite, dans le cadre du programme Santé Access, USAID Santé Access, donc financé par l'USAID, en consortium avec MSHAS, on avait adopté cette stratégie, que ce soit pour l'élaboration de stratégies de communication, mais par la suite, on avait adopté ce qu'on avait appelé, vraiment pour avoir un véritable changement au sein des communautés, il faut transformer les bénéficiaires en acteurs. Transformer les bénéficiaires en acteurs, c'est-à-dire vraiment, il faut mobiliser les communautés eux-mêmes et c'est eux, à partir d'un accompagnement, qui vont mobiliser, les sensibiliser et amener les autres membres des communautés. Et c'est pour ça qu'il y avait l'approche ménage championne qui a été adoptée dans le cadre du projet USAID Access. Ménage championne, c'est-à-dire ce sont des ménages qui ont vraiment, il y a des critères. Par exemple, les enfants de moins de 5 ans sont tous vaccinés. S'il y a une femme enceinte, elle fait la CPN, les 4 CPN tout au moins, etc. Aussi, l'utilisation de moustiquaires imprégnés d'insecticides, même pour l'utilisation de latrines améliorées. Donc, vraiment, c'est le ménage championne. Et après cela, donc, à un certain nombre, à un certain pourcentage, on remonte un peu et on identifie les villages championnes. Et par la suite, communes championnes. Donc, c'est vraiment une amélioration au sein des communautés, depuis les ménages jusqu'au niveau des communes.
Merci beaucoup, Jean-Claude. Merci, Jean-Claude. Et nous allons terminer par D'accord, Sorry. Alors, donc, on va terminer avec toi, Luc. Alors, tu viens de la Guinée, et la question que je m'en vais te poser, c'est justement, on a vu la théorie du changement social et comportemental qui a été présentée, et nous avons parlé également qu'il faut aller au-delà de la simple communication, mais quand nous faisons le point de tout ce que nous avons aujourd'hui comme stratégie, et toi en tant qu'acteur de terrain qui coordonne les activités de communication sur le terrain, qu'est-ce que tu souhaiterais qu'il soit changé? Qu'est-ce qu'on souhaite que les partenaires aujourd'hui changent dans nos approches de communication pour qu'effectivement le changement souhaité soit effectif?
Ok, merci Fortuné pour cette belle question. Pour clôturer ici, comme l'a signalé Fortuné, depuis maintenant plus de 15 ans, CEGEMAD intervient vraiment dans la communication pour le changement de comportement. Il y a eu beaucoup de choses qui ont été faites avec l'USAID à travers ces différents projets comme Faisons Ensemble, Stop Palu Plus, Stop Palu, et aujourd'hui avec le projet Notre Santé. Dans mon pays, nous avions été au cœur de toutes ces interventions. Il y a eu beaucoup de choses, de stratégies qui ont été développées sur le terrain. Mais au vu de tout ce qui a été fait sur le terrain, nous souhaiterons que les partenaires puissent vraiment accompagner les organisations locales dans la recherche de mise en œuvre. Quand je parle de recherche de mise en œuvre, il y a tellement de données qui sont collectées, il y a tellement de stratégies qui sont mises en œuvre, il y a beaucoup d'interventions. Mais est-ce que ces interventions, parfois, il ne faut pas s'arrêter, voir qu'est-ce qui est en train d'être fait? Donc, que la recherche de mise en œuvre soit fondée sur des données probantes. Et ça nous permettrait de réorienter et d'adapter les interventions sur le terrain, la mise en œuvre des stratégies aussi sur le terrain. Donc, nous recommanderons ensuite à ce qu'il y ait vraiment un plan de renforcement des capacités de ces organisations locales. Et quand je dis ces organisations locales, surtout les membres, que ce soit les managers qui sont à la tête, il faudrait que leur capacité soit renforcée pour nous permettre vraiment d'avoir vraiment un plan de communication très adapté sur le terrain. Et compte tenu du temps, je ne vais pas trop m'étaler, mais aussi je recommanderais ici que les réactions, les préoccupations et les besoins des personnes concernées, comme l'a dit mon frère de ASOC, que les cibles soient transformées en acteurs. Donc pour cela, il faut qu'il y ait un accompagnement des partenaires pour que cela soit une réalité. Donc voilà vraiment ce que nous souhaiterions que les partenaires le fassent pour que la communication pour le changement de comportement soit vraiment basée sur des données probantes. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. Merci à tous les panélistes. Le temps vraiment nous fait défaut, mais on a quand même pu exaucer des questions. Christina, if you want to make it, say something.
Thank you so much to our panelists. I'm sorry that we did not have more time to hear the wonderful work of your organizations, but if I may, I might offer them to stay up here after the panel if anyone wants to learn more, and to perhaps partner with them or just learn more about the great work the great SBC work that they are doing in their countries. And thank you, Fortune, for moderating the panel.
Thank you.
I have been told to give a few announcements. Number one is that if you entered the drawing, the lottery for the dinner with USAID leadership tonight, check your email. So I believe if you have won, you will receive an email. Callie, is that correct? That if you did not win, there won't be an email, right? Okay. But check your email. And if you don't have an email, I'm sorry, you probably didn't win. Better luck next time. And then right now, we're going to have poster displays from a selection of the countries here. Tonight it will be Benin, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, and Ghana. And then there'll be more countries presenting posters tomorrow evening. So that poster session, it looks like it will go until 6:30. So please go take a look, talk to your colleagues who have the posters. They put a lot of work into them, and I'm sure they're fantastic and would love to speak about it. So thank you so much, and don't forget to put on your behavioral sunglasses when you go back to your jobs.
Merci, merci Christina, merci à vous. Donc n'oubliez pas, mettez vraiment toutes nos communautés au cœur de vos interventions, c'est le message. Et il faut être la demande autant que l'engagement communautaire puis l'utilisation. Merci.
Alors, merci.
Merci, mon frère. Merci, hein. C'est bien.
All right.
Sorry that it was not very much time.
No, no, no.